Welcome everyone. Today we'll be talking about the decisive leaderships and timely decisions. Now, taking decision itself is the most important and crucial task in a day-to-day life, which will enable a sustainable and a successful career for yourself. Now, we will be discussing this in particular video presentation. So let us understand what are the characteristics of managerial decision. There are four of them. We make decisions on four conditions. One, we are absolutely not uncertain. Absolutely uncertain about everything. If we are certain, we would not have even contemplated on taking decision. We would have actually gone ahead and took the decision. Then there is something called risk. When there's an element of risk, in the sense if you take a decision and it might backfire, it might not come with a desired result. There's a lack of structure. Yes, definitely. Yes, what is the lack of structure? It tells whether other peoples are going to be cooperative or be a part to our decisions. Definitely, these are the lack of structures. You do not have enough confidence in the implementation of decision. And last but not the least, you are in the middle of a crisis, as in a conflict. Look at the pictograph. A person is actually confused into which path to take, because at the end of the day, the destination is not known to him. So, which particular destination he actually desires wish to go, and where will he end up, depends on the decision that comes around it. And this is all about uncertainty, conflict, lack of structures, and risks thereby. So let us understand the lack of structures thereby. First and the foremost thing, the usual state of affairs in managerial decisions. That is what we want to go around it. First, our program decisions, which have been taken on a day-to-day basis, decisions that have been encountered and have been made in the past. So you do not have any much responsibility out here. It is of most necessarily be objectively a correct answer, are solvable by using simple rules, simple procedures, or simple references that comes around it. As a non-program decision, this is where you play an important role, because the decision, the outcomes are new, the problems are novel, the situation is completely complex, so that decisions making does not have a very much clear cut answer. So decision makers must create or impose a method for making such decisions. So let us understand how to compare these kind of decision one by one. Now we can have a program decision and a non-program decision. Let us identify in terms of problem, procedures, and business example thereby. So let us say frequent, repetitive, routine, much certainty regarding cause and effect relationship is coming under program decisions. You don't need to have much of a thinking to be done. You know what is expected, what is to be done, and how do you resolve it. But what happens if the problem is novel, is unstructured, much uncertainty regarding causes and effect? Now this is where you need to build consensus. This is where you have to weigh on your risk, and that is what we want to go around it. So when program decisions are frequent, we should refer back to policies and rules and regulations. When program decisions are frequent and repetitive, there is a repository which records everything which has been done in cases certain issues arise, similar issues have arisen in the past. What has been done? You just have to enact it. Similarly, for non-program decisions, remember, non-program problems are novel, understanding, and very complex in nature. So it requires an out-of-box solution. It requires a consensus building. It requires an intuition. It requires a tolerance. Now, this is what we are looking into it. Remember, as a business example, is a diversification into a new market, or probably in a product, is what we talk about or come forward to. So characteristics of managerial decision: uncertainty and risk. Yes, there are decisions we take absolutely under certainty. So we have all the requisite information, so we don't have much of an issue with it as far as an implementation is concerned. In uncertainty, have insufficient information to know the consequences of different action. It cannot estimate the likelihood of various consequences of their actions thereby. Next is the risk. Is the available information permits estimation of likelihood of various consequences that comes around it. Probability of action being successful is less than 100%. Yes, this is the risk that comes around it, and losses may incurred. So good managers would always try to manage risk. That is what we are looking forward to. That is what we are ascertaining ourselves around here. So conflict, opposing pressures from different sources occurs at two levels. Psychological conflict, individual decision makers perceive several attractive options, perceive no attractions at all, no attractive option. There is no lucrative offers at the end of the day. So we need to have those psychological conflict wherein I end up gaining overall. Maybe the company might end up turning into red, but I end up gaining a lot. So that's one of this attraction. Perceives the company is also not making enough for itself, neither do I am generating enough revenues for my own expenses, so it doesn't have an attractive options at all. Then there is a conflict between individual and groups, between the company's objectives and individual objectives, between a group objectives and individual objectives. So few decisions are without conflict. Remember, it is only a handful of decisions wherein there are no conflict involved around it. So conflict is a major requirement that happens around, which we need to understand time and again, everyone, every day. So let us tell you the stages of decision making. I will give you the stages of decision making with the feedback which needs to be circulated time and again. Here it goes. First and foremost is to identify the problem and probably diagnosing the problem, and thereby come up with a alternative solution. Remember that slide that I've showed you in the very beginning where the gentleman is confused about which path to take. So you have alternative solution, and based upon your alternatives, evaluate them. Evaluate, weigh their pros and cons, make a particular choice and implement the decision. This is what making the choice is concerned, implementing the decision is concerned, and evaluate them all together. This is to be done at every stage. Yes, the stages of decision making is right from identifying the problem, generating the alternative solution, evaluating the alternatives, and making the choice, particularly then walking the path of adopting the implemented alternatives and evaluating whether you've gone right or gone wrong. So let us understand each of those steps in details. First and foremost is to identify and identify. You remember, you will not be able to take decision until and unless you have recognized that there is a problem. So first step itself is recognition of the fact that the problem exists, and how do we solve it? Now, how do we recognize this? Because there's a difference in gap between the desired state and the expected state or the actual state. So between what has been gone right, so between past performances, current performances, and future expected performances. Now, people might say, why, if past performance is 100%, current might be also be 100%, why is future being looked into it? Why? Because there may be added facilities and resources that might have been added to it. You might have become much more firm organization, lean organization, efficient organization. Technologies might have been brought in, so productivity has to improve upon here. So that is what needs to be understood. So if with $100 of investment, I'm making a product of $1,000, but if with $1,000 of investment, should I end up making $10,000? Probably it should be at least $100,000 of productivity. That is what we are looking into. Is so decision makers must want to resolve the problem and have the resources to do so. Let us understand how do we go for the alternatives. We have what I say, the programmed and non-programmed problems are all about it. First and foremost, a ready-made solution, ideas that have been tried before. If not tried before, somebody else, as in your competitors or in the industry, has been working on the same model and doing it in a different scale. So if you are improving of the scale of production, you just have to follow the advice of the others who have faced a similar decision. Then comes the custom made solution, is combining the new ideas to a solution or adapting the new ideas towards your organization, and that is what we are looking forward to. So then comes the third stage of evaluating alternatives. So determining the values or adequacy of the alternatives, as in why, what are the valence to it, valence to the alternatives, how attractive are they, predict the consequences if possible, with certain degree of certainty or uncertainty that comes around it, the certain degree of risk that has been associated or not. So managers should consider every possible consequences as such. Remember, the success or the failure of decision will affect the track record, and it impacts the career of the decision maker. Let us always have a backup plan, have a contingency plan in case the plan that we are enacting upon backfires, fails, falters to the desired result. So alternative course of action could be implemented. Remember how future unfold. Contingency plans are necessary to prepare for different scenarios. Let us, now that you have chosen the, have you evaluated the alternatives and now have come forward to a particular choice, a decision realize the best possible outcomes requires searching through a complete range of alternatives. Remember, each alternative is carefully assessed. Compare one alternatives to another. Satisfy, choose an option that is acceptable, though not necessarily the best or perfect. Compare the choice with the goals and not against other options altogether. So you are looking at the goals only, as in what all the other option would have yielded what different kind of goals. Search for the best alternative before you actually implement it and okays it. So optimize achieving the best possible solution among the several goals. So maximize the decision, realizing the best possible outcomes, as what I've been trying to tell it to you. Satisfy every possible stakeholders and every possible, make everybody, try to make the maximum number of people happy. So, and that can only be done when you are reaching the goals which are compatible with everybody's expectation. Optimizing is achieving the best solution thereby. Then the probably the implementing the penalty match steps in the decision making process is implementing it. Those who implement the decision should first understand the consequences and the choices why it has been made. It they should, once they have understood it, they should be committed, come what may. And remember, commitment itself will ensure a successful implementation. Definitely, they should not assume things that will go very smoothly during implementation. You might be coming up with certain problems, certain issues, certain hurdles altogether. Now, can you transfer or probably transform these problems, these issues as a opportunity? So identify them. What are the opportunities? What are the issue, and how do you mitigate it? So please prepare to be one thing, to expect the unexpected, and that is what the stages of decision making. That is what a good manager. That is what a good leader is all supposed to be. And the last step is about the implementation thing that comes around it. Before we come to the feedback, determine how things will look when the decision is fully operational. Order the steps necessarily to achieve a fully operational decision. List the resources, required activities to implement each decision. Remember, estimate the time needed for each steps and assign responsibility for the specific individual that has been maintained or given across to you. So, stages of decision making, this is what we have been trying to tell it to you. Once you have evaluated the decision, collect every possible alternatives, no matter from where you are getting it, as how well your decision is working. Evaluate them, because evaluation is very essential. This will relate to what kind of feedback will be expected. Whether feedback will be positive or negative. If the decision appears inappropriate, the process cycles goes back to the first stage. Remember, the best decision, nothing can guarantee it. Absolutely nobody will be able to come up with the best possible solution. Must be confident that the procedure used are likely to produce the best of all decision. Vigilance, decision makers carefully, consciously executes all stages of decision making thereby. And that is what we are talking about, the best of all decision. Now, there are barriers also. Now, why there are barriers? Because you are apprehending a certain amount of risk. You are taking a decision under certain amount of knowledge, and this knowledge can be completely half-baked or not baked at all, completely on assumption. And this is what I call the psychological biasness, biasness that interfere with the objective rationally. The illusion of control, the belief that one is actually in control of the things. This is one thing that everybody believes is doing, but actually nobody is having a control. Framing affect how problems or decision alternatives are phrased and perceived. Subjective influences can override objective fact. Discount the future. Weigh short-term cost and benefits more heavily than the long-term cost and benefit. The avoidance of short-term cost and seeking short-term rewards may result in negative long-term consequences. This is what we are looking at into it. Do not look for short-term gains. Always project for the long-term gains altogether, because essentially long-term gains would be beneficial for every one of the stakeholders. So psychological biases, what are they? They are illusion of control. You think that you are in control, which you are actually not. Framing effects, probably perspective of framing it into a different background is the biasness that creeps around it. You will always see the grass from your own lens. The grass might look greener, but once you reach there, you might find that grasses are all dead out there. And always discount the future. Always discount that what is going to happen and what is not going to do so. So time pressure, yes, another one of the barrier to communication or decision making is time to take appropriate decisions on a timely basis, and that is what we are talking in this particular presentation itself. Now remember, everything is dynamic and environment is changing vehemently. Today's economy places premium on acting quickly. This is what we are looking at. In order to make timely and high quality decision, one must focus on real time information, involve people more effectively and efficiently, rely on trusted experts, take a realistic view of conflict, make decisions result from intensive and cold social interaction, bargaining and politicking, as the case might be, as the case what we are looking forward all together. So pros and cons of using a group to make decisions, and how do we go ahead with it. First is the potential advantage. As a large pool of information, what do we go across? How do we go across? What are the potential advantages? Have garner as information as possible. Potential disadvantages is there might be one person who might be dominating over the group. Potential advantages is having more perspective. Potential disadvantages, it might not be satisfying enough at all. As in the pros and cons of group advantages, the potential advantages, intellectual stimulation. Since you're coming from different feedback, different perspective, different point of view, there would be a complete scenario change which you have never even thought of exploring altogether. But the group thing has potential disadvantages also. The mere fact that you are thinking in a group, that means you will not come to a consensus solutions. Not everybody is going to agree with it. There might be some people who might not actually go ahead with it. So that is what we are looking forward. Yes, as in the potential understanding, to understand the people is what actually happens. We are looking forward, absolutely we are looking forward to understand the decisions. People are to be committed to the decisions in case of the group decision as taking. These are the advantages. But what happens in terms of group displacement? New goals are replaced more often than not as the disadvantages. So we have the flip side of a coin, it's like absolutely flip side. What are the best thing and what are the worst thing of a group decision? But remember, one thing which I like about the group decision is the consensus that happens in, and not a particular person can be blamed in case it backfires, in case the decision doesn't yield the desired result. So let us understand about managing the group decision. There are three things that needs to be taken care of. One is the leadership. The leadership that needs to be taken. Avoid dominations. That is what we are looking forward to it. Then is what happens with the having a sense of camaraderie, having a sense of openness, having a sense of transparency. Ensure that everybody is participating, but at They should be participating, contributing, but not at the expense of the goal. The goal can never be compromised. As far as constructive conflict are concerned, there might be legitimate differences. You need to be there because then only vibrant viewpoints will be put forward. Stay task focused, be impersonal, play devil's advocate. Effective group decision making is what we are looking for it. Remember, effective group discussion is all about creativity, brainstorming, avoid criticizing, exhausting ideas and combining ideas thereby. And that is what we are looking forward to. Yes, as a group decision making procedures, leadership is very important, constructive conflict is very important, and so is creativity. Remember, you should always be open to any sort of criticism and try to incorporate them and in your decisions. Try to be innovative, try to think out of box, avoid getting personalized, and so on and so forth. So leadership styles, leaders should attempt to minimize the process related problems. Remember what leaders should avoid. They should avoid dominating the decisions. They should encourage participation method, ensure that every member is expressing themselves immediately. If their things are going wrong, you need to ensure that the group is going to the group norms, following the group norms, and the goals can never be compromised. Remember, the leader has to stay alert to ensure there is a satisfying outcome, and probably they do not lose the end sight of the primary objective that comes around it. Remember about constructive conflict. It's certain amount of constructive conflict should exist. I repeat again, if a constructive conflict doesn't exist, it is basically leading to a dominating position of some party or some section of the party of the group. So cognitive conflict is issue-based differences. It is based on your point of view or understanding. The constructive type of conflict can hear legitimate differences of opinion and develop better ideas. Effective conflict is emotional disagreement directed towards the people that are likely to be destructive conflict. Two techniques used to purposely program cognitive conflict. One is a devil's advocate as a job of criticizing others, and the other one be dialectic, wherein it is basically debating upon comparing two conflicting courses of action as on when on basis that happens around here. I repeat, constructive conflict is an essential ingredient for group decision making. Without it, the group will not be as effective as it should be. The last pillar of the group decision making is all about creativity, encouraging them. Creativity is essential to bring new things, new ideas into practices. There should be amalgamation of different perspective of things which have not been tried, tested in the past should be encouraged altogether. And believe me or not, whatever the best practices that has been followed around the globe can be adapted, can be modified into your new organization. So creativity is all about creation, synthesis, and modification. Oh no, what are the requirement of being creative? First and foremost is to recognize the potential with little opportunities. And in fact, if you can recognize potential with differences also, with impediments also, try to convert them as a potential for out of box solution. Obtain sufficient resources, escape from one workplace once in a while to read widely. That is what will give you a different perspective, a different understanding. Brainstorming, group generates ideas about problem. Evaluation of idea is postponed until all have been proposed altogether. Now we'll talk about the organizational decision making. Constraint on decision maker. Remember, organization can absolutely not do anything and everything that they wish to. They have to follow certain rules, certain dictums, certain facts and figures of the laws of the land. It is the constraint that the decision making has to do around with it. So what are they? The constraints are all of financial, legal, market, human, and organizational in nature. I said laws of the land, legal. I said money that might not be enough flow. I said the competition might determine certain things. Probably the technical ability, the skills of the employees might be a constraint factor. And definitely, yes, the organizational itself might be a constraint because it might be remotely located or it might not be located near the production centers or at the near the end consumer level, wherever the issues are all about it. There are constraints on decision makers, and they cannot do it as on when on basis. So models of organizational decision making are bounded by rationalities. Definitely, yes. They have to be imperfect, complex, incomplete information about alternatives. People absolutely do not get every data, every fact right on the time. The problems they face are so complex. Human being cannot process all the information to which they are exposed. Time is limited. People in the organization have conflicting goals. When the condition above hold, perfectly rational decision making gives way to more biased subjective decision process. That is what we are looking into it. Organizational decision making is all about incremental model. Major decision, remember, major decision arises through a series of smaller decision, piecemeal approach to a larger solution. The coalition model, a group with differing preferences use power and negotiation to influence decision used when people disagree about goals or complete for resources. Let us talk about the garbage can model. Now, a chaotic process leading to seemingly random decision. This is what I believe is the best model, but people do tend to shy away from it. The garbage can model occurs when people are unsure of the goals and what should be done. A dramatic departure from rationality in decision making. Absolute doing on the unthinkable thing, the garbage can model, because it can upset the situation in the very fact itself. People would not have believed that you can come up with certain weird decision, and probably they might be taken by a surprise, which might augment your decision in achieving the desired objective. But remember, garbage can model are always a short-term solution and not a long-term understanding. So we need to understand the organizational decision process as an incremental model, which is slowly and steadily, coalition model, which is jointly taken, and the garbage can model is abruptly and on an ad hoc basis that comes around it. Let us understand the negotiation and politics comes around it. Negotiation necessarily galvanize the preferences of a group, of a company, of the interest of people together, brought together. So there are something called organization politics. Yes, people often try to influence. People often try to promote, use power to persuade hidden agendas, create common goals, help to make decision making a collaborative rather than a competitive process. Decision making in a crisis, stress in a time constraint, make decision absolutely less effective. Should be prepared for crisis in advance, as the case might be. How are we going to come across the crisis? How are we going to address the crisis is the demand for the day. Remember, this is where the politics needs to be negotiated with. Um, the differences needs to be bridged in, and that is what decision making in crisis is all about. It. Remember, there can be resource constraint, there can be time constraint, there can be anything that can be unforeseen or unforetaken altogether. So let us understand the emergent theories, emergent strategies. There is all about it. We first and foremost thing should plan the strategy that all activities are engaged through the people of the organization. Now, this is a result of a dynamic process, a dynamic process where people engage in discovery. People are implementing decisions and probably initiating them on their own, and they might be experiencing the things for the first time, right? So we need to understand this emerging strategies, and it can be there in any level of the organization. It can be at the grassroots level or even at the top level, not to mention of the mid-level organizations. So emergence strategies generally have the result of constructive process altogether. You try to adapt to emergent strategies as and when you find that it is working altogether. So yes, emergent strategies evolve from every activities that the organization actually practices. Let me tell it to you, the last strategy, last slide for the day. There are three things that I keep on saying. It is all about it. First, you need to understand, discover your problem, discover your facts, discover your issues, and probably desire, monitor them, all the things. Now, how do you go about it is when you set choices, set objectives as what to go around it. What are the options that you come around here? That is what I keep on telling you about the emergent strategies or decision making. Evaluate and probably implement the most feasible solution, and this is leads to what we call the action planning wherein you are implementing the chosen situation and probably correcting as on when on basis the during the implementation phases you think the decision is getting swayed away or been getting carried off. You need to have a strict monitoring over it. You need to restructure it or realign it to the original goals of the organization. And with this, I come to an end of this presentation. Thank you for watching this video.